Hey there, guys. Phoenix Aurelius here. Thank you for joining us for this July 2022 laboratory report. The July was a very, very full month. We were constantly working on a bunch of projects. We'll just kind of start at the top. So this is prime harvest season. I hadn't been wild harvesting for a couple of years now, at least not to any serious degree like I'm used to, because I was so busy in clinical research with wellness clients. And so this year we made it a point to get out. We started off the month on July 1st with Owen and I going to Wheeler Creek, and we harvested Doug fir resin, white fir resin, feverfew, and catnip. Then we came back to the yard and harvested some just kind of wild growing German chamomile, marjoram, spearmint, and field horsetail as well. So that was actually really cool. We spent most of the month working on producing salts. So we don't like to use just standard chemical grade potassium carbonate in any of our works. And we, only calcine hardwood sources and herbs traditionally, but I started to find a really good source of potassium bitartrate from winemaking. And so we actually went ahead and started seeing if this, because we have a consistent supply of it that would, take care of the majority of our needs, what it would look like in terms of time and labor and leachings and like the amount of work that goes into it to see if that could be a viable way for us to produce our potassium bicarbonate. It turns out it was actually pretty good. For every 42 grams of potassium bitartrate, we got about 16 grams of finished salt of salt. So it was not a terrible turnaround. It was definitely less than 50% that we were maybe ideally hoping for, but it's still good enough. 16 grams of salt is actually a very significant amount. Like, you can make a good amount of spagyric tinctures with that. So basically, instead of just relying on potassium bitartrate, though, we also do have all of our own spent biomass material and hardwoods from here on the property that we all calcine together in order to get our bulk ash, and then we calcine that and we work on that too. That does take a significant amount more effort than what the potassium bitartrate does. So basically our approach at the present moment is, if we are in dire need for large volume batches or whatever else of a grand quantity of salts, potassium bitartrate will basically be a supplemental method that we can use without sacrificing any quality or efficaciousness, or even energetics for that matter, to our material. So it was a good thing. I'm glad that we did that research, and I feel like it's probably something I'll start teaching my students about as well. The reason why we were so short on salts this month and why we had to engage in this research anyway was basically because we had an anomaly happening where our salts turned aquamarine the month before. And this we still have not sorted out. After we took those aquamarine salts and dissolved them in water, the water became neon yellow. We kept trying to leach them and filter them and calcine them and so on and so forth several times, and they stayed equally as yellow. So we ended up dissolving those salts, or trying to dissolve them into alcohol. A certain portion of those neon yellow salts actually did dissolve in the alcohol. So we filtered behind the salts and they lightened up a little bit, but they are still very yellow. And whatever dissolved in the alcohol, we distilled that alcohol out through a retort, and there was a resin left behind. So that was ethanol soluble, and then we poured a little water in it after the distillation was done, and it's also water soluble stuff. So we have that crystallized out. It's really interesting because we just keep pulling different portions of this apart. We cannot find exactly what happened to our potassium carbonate, though. It is chemically changed and altered in some way because it's not behaving like potassium carbonate. And it doesn't seem to, when we calcine it, have the same weight per volume as what an equal mass of potassium carbonate has. So there are certain physical characteristics that tell us that it's not any longer the same substance. And the way we got to that was calcining in a furnace at 650 degrees Celsius when the B sub Z value was at negative 11 nanoteslas, and when the barometric pressure, I believe, was at 59.88. So I'm pretty sure that those were the parameters, just off the top of my head, that led to that anomaly. So if you guys want to try it at home, or have the resources to see if that can be duplicated, replicated outside of that one isolated experience, That'd be cool because it's the first time in over 20 years of doing this, or about 20 years, I guess I should say, of doing this, that I've run into any issue like that whatsoever. We also ran a split test on the best way to prepare vanilla extract, and that's basically because we needed vanilla extract, and I wanted to find the very best way of doing it. I have lots of different commercial recipes and other things like that, so it's not like, I'm exploring completely uncharted territory with this, but I know that there's a better way to be able to get more flavor or the more delicate flavors or other things out of it to create a very unique and artistic vanilla extract. Along with the rest of our salt work, we also made salt of the second generation. So I have a huge pot of all of the elixir salts that I made over about a 2 or 3 year period where I just continually combine them together. So there's, at this point, probably about 300 or more different herbs whose elixirs are all kind of conjoined together. And we took a quantity of this and we calcined this as well to split test the difference between the salt of the second generation and the potassium bitartrate efficacy. It's definitely a lot harder to do the salt of the second generation, but you also yield a greater quantity of salts. And we do have a very substantial amount of this to draw from. I've been kind of keeping a lot of it as a personal spiritual kind of project, but I still have tons to work with for that purpose as well. So we've started incorporating those into some of our tinctures. And in fact, we added the salt of the second generation to spagyric tinctures of red antler reishi, polyrachis ant, Chinese mugwort, kiosk mastic, bahita, black goji, bellfruit, and grapeseed during the month of July. So there was a lot of stuff that we actually did. And it's said that the salt of the second generation or of the third generation or fourth generation, they're more refined and they create different chemical changes or can enhance the energy and the purity of the tincture. There's a lot of different authors that talk about different types of things with that. I've only ever gone up to the salt of the seventh generation, and I can tell you that, yeah, it does definitely produce different chemical reactions when it starts to get that pure. Let's see. The only other two things is that we prepped for days to get ready for the Good Medicine Confluence. Of course, we had our 40% off sale in the week leading up to that, so we got a lot more sales than what we anticipated. And although that was a great thing, that's a problem we love to have, it was difficult to fulfill all of the orders before we were gone for an entire week. So if you were one of the people who ordered, I'm sorry, we are working at the present moment as fast as we possibly can to get all of those orders filled, and you probably should have or will very soon receive an email letting you know that your order is shipped and it's on its way to you. But the Good Medicine Confluence was awesome. It took us tons of prep time. We, as the Phoenix Aurelius Research Academy, have never had a vending booth before. I've done lots of information booths and things like that, but we've never actually vended anything. This year, I just decided that we should, and we ended up packing and creating an entire system of organization for 55 different spagyric tinctures that we filled to order at the actual Confluence itself, and that was really awesome. Just like always, we have our handwritten labels. We had, custom filling, and we were able to do it very awesome, very gracefully with the system that we developed. So all of this took days in advance of me, having had vendor booths and worked for vendor booths before, figuring out how we would be able to take our product and translate that to an effective vendor booth. And it was awesome. We were definitely one of, if not the most popular booths at the Confluence, and folks also absolutely loved the classes that I had to offer. And in fact, there was such an overwhelming request for people to come and study that we decided we'll be putting together a couple of in-person classes this fall, so keep an eye out for those. But yeah, the Confluence was amazing. I mean, got to meet Sean Patrick O'Donoghue, who lectured. He lectured on a few things, New England Ogham. He also did, it's called Silver Branch, I think. It was basically herbs that deal with the Irish otherworld, so that was really cool and especially up my alley. Dr. Profrick, Dr. Kenneth Profrick, he had some amazing classes. I got to meet him in person, took one on harvesting metals actually from him. And then there were just so many other courses and classes and other things that I didn't even get to attend, especially having a vendor booth and being a speaker. But Yeah. Oh, and Laura Quessenberry, she was amazing. Appalachian spirit medicine and Appalachian doll making, the magic of American ginseng, different types of things like that within the Appalachian tradition. So, man, it was just so cool. All of us had a really great time. We spent a little bit of time on the way back coming up through Silverton and Ouray, and we had never been there before. And wow, that was among the most stunning of territories that any of us had ever seen. So, yeah, it was beautiful. It was a busy month though, and we got back and unfortunately just had to hit the ground running on filling orders and getting caught up. So here we are in early August doing all of those things, but that pretty much brings us up to date. So as always, thank you so much for all of your support for us here at the Phoenix Aurelius Research Academy. We've had a lot of incoming messages telling us like thank you, and of course at the Good Medicine Confluence too, thank you for doing what you're doing. Like there's nobody doing stuff like this, and that's why we do it, and it's definitely the wind in our sails. So thank you so much again for all of your support, and if you need anything, just go ahead and reach out to us at support@phoenixaurelius.org. Thanks again.